Did you know that more than 90% of viewers don't subscribe to our channel? If you're watching this and haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. We don't run ads on our videos, so we don't earn anything from them. Every subscription, every like, every comment truly means the world to us. Your support keeps our passion alive and motivates us to create more. We'd also love to hear from you. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Let's start our story. Story number 1. On a flat, endless stretch of Midwestern interstate, a long-haul driver named Daniel watched the sky turn from deep blue to ink black in his windshield. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour when the radio felt louder and the cab felt smaller. His trailer was loaded with dry goods headed west, and the nearest town lights were a faint orange glow far behind him. The CB radio hissed with a low blanket of static, comforting, familiar white noise. He liked to keep it on even when no one was talking. It made the cab feel less empty. Outside, the lane reflectors slid under his headlights in a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Wind pressed softly against the sides of the trailer. The world was a tunnel of light ahead and darkness to every side, like the truck was cutting through an ocean at night. Then the static shifted. It tightened, turned choppy, almost like a deep breath being drawn on the other side of the speaker. Daniel's hand moved instinctively toward the volume knob, but before he touched it, a voice slipped through the noise. Breaker. 19. You out there? Westbound with the white Kenworth? Daniel's eyes flicked to the CB. He hadn't transmitted in almost an hour. He hadn't given his handle. The description, though, was precise down to the color and make of his truck. He answered anyway, a reflex born of years on the road. Westbound, yeah. Go ahead. The transmit light didn't come on. Yet his words filled the cab clearly, as if repeated back to him from the CB, only he hadn't pressed the mic. The realization sent a slow chill along his arms. The voice returned, deep and calm, carrying the faintest twang from nowhere in particular. It sounded older, worn down by too many miles. You got trouble up ahead, driver. Big one. Don't stay on this road past mile marker 242. Daniel swallowed, eyes searching the dark for any hint of an accident. You with highway patrol or something? A soft chuckle came through the speaker. Just someone who knows this stretch better than most. Take State 47 at the next exit instead. You won't like what you find if you keep going straight. His phone, docked on the dash, showed the blue line of his GPS route. It didn't mention State 47 at all. No traffic alerts, no closures. Just another 300 miles of interstate. Still, something in the way the voice spoke, no rush, no drama. Just certainty held his attention. How do you know I'm in a white Kenworth? He asked. A pause. Static swelled and faded. Same as always, the voice said quietly. Seen you pass here more times than you'd believe. The hair at the back of his neck prickled. You got a handle? Another small pause, as if the speaker were picking from a list. Call it Midnight Prophet, the voice replied. Exit's coming up in 5 minutes. Mile marker 240 is cracked halfway down the post. Don't miss it. The radio clicked into empty static. Daniel drove in silence for a long 30 seconds, heart beating a little harder. It could have been a prank. Maybe a driver coming the opposite way, watching for a white rig. But he hadn't seen taillights or headlights for a while now. The highway around him was desert quiet. 2 minutes later, the mile marker appeared in his headlights. 240. The reflective green post streaked past, and he saw it clearly. A jagged crack ran halfway down its length, like someone had hit it years ago, and no one bothered to replace it. He licked his lips, feeling the weight of the steering wheel in his hands. 2 miles to go before the turnoff that didn't exist on his screen. As he approached mile marker 241, a faint glow flickered on the horizon, red and blue points of light. Very distant, but definitely there. It could have been a patrol car. It could have been more than one. His GPS chirped gently, insisting he continue straight ahead. The next sign rose out of the dark. Exit 147. State Route 47. Local access only. A faded arrow pointed to a thin strip of pavement peeling away to the right. There it was. His thumb hovered over the radio's transmit button, but he didn't press it. Instead, he clicked off the cruise control and eased the wheel to the right, the trailer yawning behind him as he left the smooth consistency of the interstate for an older, narrower road. The GPS panicked at once. The route recalculated, then lost signal entirely. The map turned gray, little spinning circle turning and turning without finding itself. Route recalculating, the synthetic voice murmured, then gave up. Darkness swallowed him more completely once he left the main lanes. The pavement under his tires was rougher, the lines more faded. Trees edged closer to the shoulder, their branches leaning toward the cab like listeners. For a while, nothing happened. The only sound was the steady growl of the engine and the soft rattle of empty bottles in the side compartment. Daniel tried to tell himself he'd probably just taken a pointless detour because some bored driver thought it would be funny. But then he saw the glow again. Not red and blue this time, just red. A smear of brake lights stretching along the interstate, now running parallel and slightly ahead of him to the left. From his angle, he could see shapes of stopped vehicles, a cluster of reflective vests moving through the dark. He couldn't make out details, but he didn't need to. He knew the pattern. He'd seen scenes like that too many times. Cars angled badly, trailers jackknifed and blocking, the slow, resigned movements of emergency crews arriving too late to stop it, only to clean it up. His eyes slid down to the CB, half expecting the voice again. Static. He drove for another 20 minutes, following the twist and stretch of State Route 47. The farther he went, the older the road felt. Patches of gravel interrupted the asphalt. The paint stripe thinned until it was only a ghost of white. Road signs began to look wrong. One for a town he'd never heard of. Holloway Junction. 7 miles. He checked the GPS again. No such name, no marking, no side roads. Just a blank stretch of nothing where this narrow road now clearly existed. After another quiet mile, the voice returned. Doing good, driver. Almost there now. Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. Where is there? A slight, almost affectionate humor colored the answer. Somewhere safer than tonight's other choice. You'll see. Fatigue and unease mixed in his chest. His eyelids felt heavier than they should have. He glanced at the dashboard clock. Only 40 minutes had passed since the interstate. But it felt like much longer. Ahead, the faint glow of sodium vapor streetlights appeared the soft amber haze of a small town. He rolled under a wooden sign arched over the road. Welcome to Holloway Junction. Pop 1482. The lettering looked hand-painted, chipped at the edges. A spray of dead leaves hung from one corner, undisturbed by wind. The town itself seemed frozen in a half-remembered decade. Old brick storefronts hugged the main street, their windows displaying things no one really sold anymore. Tube televisions, transistor radios, analog clocks in dusty glass cases. A lone diner with a buzzing neon sign. A gas station with a single island of pumps, their numbers flipping on mechanical dials instead of digital screens. Every window held light, but he didn't see anyone behind the glass. He pulled the rig into the lot by the gas station, gravel crunching under heavy tires. The overhead light flickered once and steadied with a weary hum. The CB crackled softly. Go on and fuel up, the voice suggested. Place closes early. You'll want a full tank before you head back out. Daniel swallowed. He checked his fuel gauge out of habit. He had more than enough to reach the next known stop once he rejoined the interstate if he rejoined it. Yet the needle seemed to have dipped lower than it should have for the distance traveled. He frowned, chalked it up to the oddities of older roads and constant idling, and set the brake. The air outside felt colder than it had any right to be for early autumn. No wind. Just a deep, still chill that sank through his jacket. The town was utterly quiet. No music drifted from the diner. No late-night TV flickered in any window. The station door swung open with the soft ring of a bell. A man in an oil-stained shirt leaned on the counter, a newspaper spread in front of him. The paper's date was smudged, but it felt old. A model of a pickup truck on an advert looked decades out of place. The man looked up, eyes focusing on Daniel as if he'd been expecting him. "Evening, Daniel," he said. "Regular diesel?" The sound of his name from a stranger's mouth landed heavily. "Have we met?" The attendant smiled, a slow, worn curve that didn't reach his eyes. "You been through here before?" Daniel forced a laugh that sounded thin even to his own ears. "Don't think so. GPS doesn't even know this place." "Yeah," the man said softly. "It wouldn't." His gaze drifted past Daniel's shoulder, to the parking lot, to the cab of the truck. His expression darkened for a fraction of a second, then smoothed over. "Pump'll start when you lift the handle," he said. "Clock's been stuck a long time, so you'll have to trust your own. You get some coffee at the diner, too. You look tired." Outside again, the air felt heavier, as if the whole town were holding its breath. He started the pump. Diesel flowed with a low, rhythmic thunk. The mechanical numbers on the display spun with a soft, rattling click. Overhead, the sky looked wrong. The stars were there. They were always there along the open road, but their patterns didn't line up with what he'd grown used to. Constellations were slightly skewed, as if someone had nudged them out of place and hoped no one would notice. He looked toward the end of the main street. A dog crossed the road, head down, tail limp. It disappeared behind a parked car. A moment later, the same dog crossed again, from the same direction, the same slow gait, the same downward tilt of its head. This time, Daniel watched carefully. The animal vanished behind the same car, but did not emerge on the other side. No sound of nails on pavement, no jingle of tags. His throat felt dry. The CB whispered to life again from inside the cab, even though he'd left the door closed. "Coffee, driver," the voice said, close and almost gentle. "Helps with the change. No one ought to be on the road feeling like you do." The word change stuck in his mind, cold and unwelcome. He finished fueling, capped the tank, and walked toward the diner. The bell above its door rang with the same tone as the one in the station. A familiar melody played faintly from speakers hidden somewhere, something old and scratchy, barely there. Inside, every booth was occupied. Truckers filled them, men and women in caps and worn jackets, some with logos from companies that had gone out of business years ago. Their plates were full of food that steamed gently. Eggs, pancakes, toast. Coffee cups sat in front of each of them, but no one moved. They sat with hands halfway to mouths, forks hovering in the air, eyes unfocused and directed toward the windows. Their chests rose and fell, so slowly that Daniel had to stare a full 10 seconds before he saw it. Not statues then, not quite. Behind the counter, a woman in a pink uniform wiped at an already clean spot, her motion a repetitive, absent-minded circle. She looked up and brightened. "There you are," she said. "Couldn't let you leave again without a warm drink." Again, Daniel stepped back. His boots squeaked slightly on the tiled floor. "I've never been here," he whispered. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes glistened suddenly, like someone holding back something unsaid. "Sure," she answered softly. "You keep saying that." One of the truckers in the nearest booth, a heavy-set man with gray in his beard, blinked slowly and turned his head. His eyes struggled to focus on Daniel's face. "It's better if you sit down," the man murmured. "Road's different out there, once you've come through." "Better than what?" Daniel asked. The man's gaze slid past him, to the door, to the darkness outside. Then staying on it, he said, "At least in here, time gets fuzzy. Out there, it just stops." The CB crackled faintly from his cab again, the sound somehow seeping under the diner door. "Don't fight it," the voice coaxed. "You've driven so long. You're tired. This town knows how to hold on to folks like you. No more jackknifes, no more close calls. Just warm coffee and a place in the booth." A sudden sharp instinct rose inside Daniel, cutting through the weight pressing on his shoulders. It came from somewhere stubborn, somewhere that remembered rising sun on chrome, remembered long stretches of road without strange towns or knowing voices. He shook his head. "No." The woman behind the counter watched him carefully. The corners of her smile faltered. For a heartbeat, her expression looked like raw, quiet relief. "Then you'd better not sit down," she said quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And don't listen too long when it talks. The longer you stay, the more you remember it instead of everything else." "Remember what?" he asked. She flicked her eyes toward the nearest wall clock. Its hands pointed to 12 and 12, frozen. The clock on the opposite wall read the exact same time, as did the little clock above the coffee machine, as did the one reflected faintly in the window glass. "Here," she said, "the night doesn't have to end. Some folks think that's a blessing, but you still look like someone who likes the sunrise." The CB voice slithered through the walls, low and unhurried. "It always plays out the same, Daniel. You panic, you leave, you crash, or you don't. But somehow you end back here. You can save yourself a lot of trouble by staying. This time, just sit." He stepped backward, the bell above the door jingling softly as his shoulder nudged it open. The woman called after him, but the words came in a rush, almost as if she had to push them out before something took them back. Turn it off. Not just the volume. Pull the power. It can't follow you if it can't speak. The gravel in the lot crunched under his boots like brittle bones. The pumps had stopped. The air had grown stiller, thicker, like the moment before a storm that would never quite arrive. Inside the cab, the dashboard lights glowed a gentle green. The CB sputtered softly with intermittent whispers. Always come back. This is where the road ends. You don't remember the last time, but this time you will. His fingers found the power cable at the back of the radio. For a heartbeat, his resolve wavered. On every lonely stretch of interstate, that box had been a lifeline. Weather alerts, friendly voices, warnings about ice and slowdowns. Then he pictured the diners full of half-remembered drivers. The repetitive motion of the station attendant's cloth. The dog looping endlessly across the same strip of road. He yanked the cable free. The radio died mid-word. The static chopped cleanly in half. Silence flooded the cab. At once, the weight in the air shifted. Lights in the town flickered just once, like a small power surge. The engine idle evened out, the roughness disappearing as if it had never been there. The dashboard clock jumped. For a moment, the digital numbers scrambled, then settled on a time 2 hours later than it should have been. 2 hours. Gone. He gripped the wheel and eased the truck into motion. The town's main street rolled past his windows. The diner, the stationary truckers, the small town storefronts. No one turned to watch him go. The welcome sign flashed in his side mirror and disappeared. He followed State Route 47 out into a darkness that felt cleaner, emptier. After 10 minutes, the worn asphalt smoothed out. A green sign appeared overhead. Interstate 88. 1 mile. He exited back onto the familiar ribbon of concrete. The GPS reconnected with a cheerful chime, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened at all. A mile marker flashed by. 247. In his mirror, he saw the faint glow of emergency lights clustered around the side of the road at 242, an accident scene, receding into the dark. He drove until the sky lightened first to deep blue, then to gray, then to the soft gold of early dawn. At the next large truck stop, he parked his rig, stepped down, and felt the earth a little more solid beneath his boots. Over cheap coffee inside, he asked the clerk if there was a town called Holloway Junction anywhere nearby. She thought for a moment, shook her head, and tapped at her computer. Nothing by that name, she said. Not in this state. You sure you got it right? He nodded slowly, lips pressed together. In the reflection of the stainless steel coffee pots, his face looked a little older than he remembered. Back in the cab that night, habit made his hand reach for the CB out of instinct. It sat dark and silent on the dash, the power cable coiled beside it. He told himself he wouldn't plug it back in. Hours into the next run, though, the emptiness in the cab grew too loud. Finally, with a resigned exhale, he slipped the cable into its port. The radio came alive with a soft hiss. For most of the night, it was just that ordinary static, occasional chatter from other drivers, a weather warning 2 states over. Then, around the same hour as before, the speaker popped. A familiar low voice slipped through, thinner now, strained. Some of you made it out this time, it murmured. But some of you stayed. It's always both. The transmission cut abruptly. No one responded. No one called back. Daniel drove on, the yellow line stretching ahead into the night, wondering which version of himself was sipping coffee in a booth where the clocks never moved and whether, somewhere, a town called Holloway Junction was still waiting at the end of an exit that didn't always appear. Story number 2. On a late autumn night, when the air grew thin and cold in the mountains, a driver named Maria guided her rig up a steep western pass that most people avoided after dark. She hauled refrigerated produce on a tight schedule, and the shortcut over the ridge meant saving almost an hour if the weather held. It didn't. By the time she reached the first set of hairpin curves, the clear night had turned to a slow, drifting fog. At first it hugged the valleys below, soft and silver under the moonlight. Then it climbed, creeping up the rock faces and seeping across the lanes like some patient, formless thing. Maria flicked her wipers on low, even though the air felt dry. The blades swept back and forth over glass that showed less and less of the world beyond. Her dash lights glowed softly, casting a pale blue across her hands. The CB hummed in the background, low but comforting. Somewhere far away, a couple of drivers argued about fuel prices. Another complained about a way station. Ordinary sounds. Familiar. The next switchback loomed a dark curve cutting back against the mountain. Yellow chevrons reflected her headlights weakly as she downshifted and eased the truck into the turn, feeling the trailer tug, the weight reminding her of what could happen if she misjudged it. Fog thickened as she climbed. It wasn't like normal cloud cover. This was denser, almost textured. Headlights pressed into it and came back weaker, shrinking the world ahead to a short stretch of lane lines and the faintest suggestion of rock barrier on the right. Her speed dropped. 30, then 25. She leaned forward slightly, squinting into the gray. The CB chatter faded, as if the fog absorbed not just light, but sound. Only the engine's steady growl and the occasional clink of suspension kept her company. Then a pair of red points appeared in front of her. Tail lights. They were faint at first, swimming at the edge of visibility, then grew clearer as she eased off the throttle. Some driver ahead of her had taken the same route, moving slowly through the soup. Relief brushed through her. Having another vehicle on the road meant she wasn't alone up here. She fell in behind at a safe distance, watching the taillights bob gently with the motion of the truck ahead. The CB crackled once, then cleared its throat of static. A voice came through, male, calm, older, with a dry rasp to it. Reefer on the uphill. You got me behind you, or in front? Maria glanced at the mic, then at the lone pair of lights ahead. Her reefer unit hummed behind the cab, sending a faint vibration through the seat. She pressed the transmit button. I've got a set of taillights in front of me. That you? A soft chuckle. Suppose it is. You're running light for this pass, but fog likes to play tricks. Best keep me between the lines for a while. The phrase sounded old-fashioned, something out of a different decade. Still, there was a calming certainty to the way he said it. What's your handle? She asked. Call me Redwood, he answered. Been on this hill longer than I care to think about. His taillights stayed steady, never swerving, never jerking. Whoever he was, he knew the road. Maria adjusted her speed to match his. Curve warnings rose out of the mist just ahead of her bumper and slid away again. The guardrail on the right appeared and disappeared in pieces, as if the mountain had been cut into narrow frames of film playing too slowly. You familiar with this pass? Redwood asked. First time at night, she admitted. GPS says it's the quickest route. Weather looked fine before I started the climb. Yeah, Redwood murmured. GPS doesn't see fog, or what's in it. The way he said that last part made the skin along her arms pebble. She swallowed and checked her mirrors out of habit. Nothing behind her but dense, lightless gray. What do you mean? She asked, trying to make her tone casual. He didn't answer right away. The two sets of lights, his red, her white, floated together through the milky air. Engine noise bounced weirdly off the canyon walls, sometimes sounding too close, sometimes far away. You ever feel like the road gets longer when you're tired? Redwood said eventually. Like a stretch that should take 10 minutes takes 20. Mile markers that don't add up? Sure, Maria replied. Long nights, bad coffee. Sometimes it's that, he said. Sometimes it isn't. The fog swallowed another reflector post. How long you been driving, Maria? He asked. She paused. 6 years. Then you know most passes shut down with visibility this bad, he said. Check your phone. See if you got a service alert. She hesitated. One hand on the wheel, she used the other to wiggle her phone free from its dock. The signal bar blinked between 1 and none. Data crawled. Eventually, a notification slid onto the screen. Mountain pass closed, heavy fog, and low visibility. Do not proceed. Time stamped 50 minutes earlier. Her heart bumped hard. That can't be right, she said. Gate was up. No warning lights. I didn't see a single closure sign. Sometimes they forget to close the gate, Redwood said. Sometimes they do close it. He let the words hang there. Maria stared at his taillights. They didn't feel like salvation anymore. They felt like the only visible thing in a world that might not be behaving the way it was supposed to. Thunder rumbled softly not from the sky but from somewhere ahead and below. The low, irregular boom of something heavy in motion. Or something heavy stopping abruptly. "What's that?" she asked. "Old business," Redwood said. "Keep your eyes on my lights. You're coming up on mile marker 97. Don't look left when you pass it." The instruction was so specific that it rooted itself in her mind. Don't look left at 97. Which, of course, made her want to. The mile markers crept by painfully slow. 100, 99, 98. The world outside her cab had shrunk to numbers on sticks and 2 red dots. When 97 slid out of the fog, she found herself staring at it, more drawn to that than to anything else. A simple green sign. White lettering catching her beams. Beside it, pressed against the mountain's shoulder, something darker loomed. A shape. A mass that the fog almost but not entirely hid. Maria gritted her teeth and tried to keep her focus straight ahead. Don't look left. But in the corner of her vision, a patch of shadow shifted. There was a trick the brain played on drivers in bad conditions. It filled gaps. Made patterns where none existed. She told herself that was what this was. Just imagination. Then she heard it. A high, faint sound slipping through the insulated glass and engine noise. A distant, strained squeal. Not metal, not rubber. Something caught between. She jerked her head toward the shoulder. The fog thinned just enough for one frame of clarity. There, hunched against the rock, stood the twisted outline of a tractor trailer. The cab had crumpled inward toward the barrier. The trailer leaned at an unnatural angle, half off the road, half pinned. The logo on its side was barely visible through grime, but she caught a word in big, old-fashioned block letters. Redwood. Her fingers dug into the steering wheel. The glimpse lasted less than a second before fog swallowed everything again. His taillights ahead never faltered. Her voice came out too tight. "Redwood. How long have you been on this hill?" He took his time before answering. "Long enough to know you're not supposed to be here," he said. "Not tonight. Not this way." The CB's small speaker carried an odd echo, as if he were talking from inside a tunnel. "So why are you?" she whispered. "Same reason you are," he said. "Didn't listen the first time." A shiver walked up her spine. She thought about asking the natural next question what happened to him, but something in her resisted. She felt that if she made him say it out loud, something would change in the cab, and she wouldn't like how. Instead, she said, "You're helping me." "Some nights that's how it goes," Redwood replied. "Some nights we follow each other down. Depends who blinks first." The phrasing sank in slowly. "We follow each other down. You mean, there are others?" she asked. "Always," he said quietly. "Fogs full of old runs. People who didn't know how to go around. Far below, a second, faint set of sirens wailed in the valley, muffled and distant, as if arriving too late for a call that had already been answered years ago. For a stretch of road after that, neither of them spoke. The grade finally began to tip downward. Her engine brake murmured as she eased into the descent. The fog didn't thin, but a sense of movement of leaving something behind grew in her chest. "You're going to see a flashing sign in about 2 miles, Redwood said eventually. "Says, exit, scenic overlook, 1/4 mile. Ignore it. There's no overlook anymore. Just a cul-de-sac and a fence." "Why ignore it?" she asked. "Because you'll think you see the end of the fog if you pull off there," he said. "You'll think you see clear sky and a straight shot down. You won't. And by the time you realize it, you'll be aimed at something you can't stop for." Her grip on the wheel tightened again. "How do you know that?" "For the same reason I told you not to look left at 97, he said. "Some mistakes you only have to make once." His taillights glowed a little brighter through the gray, as if the road's slight drop had brought them closer. Then, without warning, one of them blinked out for a moment, like a bad bulb. When it came back, it wasn't quite in the same position. "Almost there, Reefer," Redwood said. His voice sounded strained, like each word cost effort. "When the fog breaks, you keep going. Don't slow down to look for me. Don't stop on the shoulder. Don't look back." "Why wouldn't I?" she asked, sudden panic rising. "You're ahead of me. Where are you going to be?" Silence filled the cab. "Redwood?" She tried again. "You still there?" The CB hissed softly. Ahead, the tail lights started to dim. Not fade into distance, dim, as if someone were slowly turning down a knob. Their red bled into the fog, less and less distinct, until they were just two pinkish smears in the gray. "Redwood?" she called, louder this time. The smears pulsed once and then went out. Her headlights struck. Nothing but empty fog. She hit the brake too hard. The trailer nudged, a heavy reminder that panic had a weight of its own. She forced herself to ease off, heart racing, muscles tense. Alone again on the hill. The CB's static rose and fell. Then, one last time, his voice came through, barely audible, as if from very far away. "Keep it between the lines, Maria." The fog in front of her began to pale. At first, she thought it was a trick of her eyes, strained too long by gray. But the color continued to shift slowly, gradually towards something lighter. She held her breath. With sudden, almost shocking abruptness, she burst out of it. Clear air. Stars. A dark sky unmarred by cloud. The road unfurled down the mountain in gentle curves, completely visible. In her mirror, the wall of fog loomed like a physical barrier, hanging across the pass behind her like a curtain. She drove another mile before her legs remembered how to relax. At the next turnout, a lit sign warned, "Pass closed. Do not enter. Heavy fog." A state trooper sat in his cruiser, angled across the uphill lanes, lights off but presence obvious. He watched Maria's rig roll by on the downhill side with tired surprise, then clicked on his spotlight and swung it briefly across her trailer, as if to confirm she was really there. At the bottom of the mountain, she pulled into a small truck stop. Her hands shook as she poured coffee from a pot that had probably been sitting for hours. The cashier, an older woman with kind eyes, made casual conversation. "Fog bad up there?" she asked. "You could say that," Maria replied. The woman nodded toward a corkboard on the wall. A faded newspaper clipping, browned with age, had been pinned under cracked plastic. Its headline was simple and blunt. "Trucker killed in fog, related crash on mountain pass." The photo beneath showed a twisted tractor trailer against the rock face at mile marker 97. The logo on the side of the trailer was the same one Maria had seen through the mist. Redwood Freight. The date on the article was nearly 20 years old. "People still talk about that one," the cashier said quietly. "They say in bad fog, some drivers see his lights ahead, like he's still on the hill trying to find his way down." Maria's mouth went dry. "Do they ever say he talks on the radio?" The woman shrugged. "Some do. Some say they just follow his lights and make it through. Others." She trailed off, eyes drifting toward the door that led back out to the dark lot. "Others don't come down at all. They close the pass and only find him when it clears." Maria didn't answer. Later, back in her cab, she thumbed the CB power off and on once, listening to the quiet between stations. Nothing unusual. Just the blur of distant chatter. She drove that route again months later, in clear weather, early in the morning. No fog, no closure gates. At mile marker 97, she slowed and looked left. A dark scar remained on the rock face where metal had once slammed into stone. Bits of guardrail were newer there, shinier, like they'd been replaced not too long ago. A small, sun-faded cross leaned against the barrier, almost swallowed by weeds. As she passed, she felt a faint, irrational urge to flip on her CB and say thank you to an empty channel. Instead, she just tightened her grip on the wheel and kept it steady between the lines, wondering if somewhere up in that mountain fog that only appeared some nights, a pair of red taillights still waited for drivers who didn't yet know the road was closed. Story number 3. On the long, level stretch of interstate that cut through 3 states of farmland, a driver named Aaron settled into the kind of night that usually went unnoticed by the world. The hour was late enough that most cars had vanished, but not so late the truck stops had gone quiet. His rig hummed steadily along, trailer full of palletized electronics bound for a distribution center 2 states away. The cab was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the dash. Out beyond the glass, the world was a tunnel of black, with a strip of silver-gray pavement running through it. Headlights carved out a bubble of vision, just enough to see the next dashed line, the next reflector, the faint silhouettes of fence posts sliding by. He tuned the radio away from music and chatter, and thumbed over to the low-power advisory station listed on the last roadside sign. AM 1000, 610. Traveler information. A faint hiss resolved into a warm, neutral female voice. You are listening to the Department of Transportation Highway Advisory Service for Interstate 64, mile markers 180 through 260. Conditions are normal. No active construction or closures. Next rest area, 13 miles. Aaron let it run as background. It was something to break up the monotony, a grounded, official sound to remind him that the world was still organized out there somewhere. He took a sip from his travel mug. The coffee had cooled, but he drank it anyway. The logbook on his seat showed he still had hours to go before a required break. The night felt manageable. The advisory voice droned gently about seatbelts, wildlife, and winter driving, then fell silent. The station hummed with a low undercurrent of static. Aaron's attention drifted. The repetition of painted lines and markers pulled at his eyes, that familiar highway hypnosis creeping around the edges of his focus. Then the advisory station clicked on again, mid-sentence, as if it had been waiting. To the driver of the red Freightliner with a white refrigerated trailer, the voice said smoothly, "Reduce your speed by 10 miles per hour. Deer in the right-hand ditch at mile marker 207. Aaron's hands tightened around the wheel. He glanced at his mirrors on instinct, even though he knew no one was back there to see him. The description was too specific to brush off. Red Freightliner. White reefer. This stretch of interstate was nearly empty. The odds of someone randomly broadcasting that phrasing right when he happened to be listening were low enough to make his heartbeat louder in his ears. He eased off the throttle and watched his speed drop. From 65 down to 55. Engine noise softened. The lane markers slid by, a little more slowly. Mile marker 207 appeared out of the dark, its green surface shining in his beams. There, in the right-hand ditch, stood 3 deer. Their bodies were still, but their ears flicked toward his approaching truck. One of them stepped nervously toward the shoulder, then back, hoofs scraping gravel. If he'd been going his usual speed and a headlight flash had startled them, he might have met them in the lane. As it was, they watched him roll by, their eyes catching his lights like chips of pale glass. He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The advisory station cut out again, as if it had finished what it needed to say. He told himself it was probably coincidence. Maybe there was a wildlife sensor. Maybe someone watching highway cameras had decided to issue a targeted alert. Technology could do strange things now. Still, as the miles rolled by and nothing else out of the ordinary happened, the moment stuck in his mind. An hour later, as his eyes started to burn with the strain of staring at the same strip of road, a familiar chime interrupted the static. You are listening to the Department of Transportation Highway Advisory Service, the woman's voice began. Then, without missing a beat, it shifted. Aaron, it said, you have been awake for 19 hours. Your last meaningful rest was 2 nights ago. Microsleep is likely within the next 60 minutes. Driver fatigue is a contributing factor in 40% of serious crashes. His name landed in the cab like a dropped wrench. He flicked his gaze to the radio. The orange display showed the same station ID, the same frequency. No change. Pull off at exit 212, the voice continued, matter of fact. There is a well-lit travel plaza with space for trucks. Your schedule allows for a 6-hour delay without penalty. He hadn't discussed his schedule with anyone at the DOT. His company knew it. His dispatcher knew it. His electronic log knew it. But not some anonymous advisory voice. His first thought was, someone is playing with the feed. He snatched up his CB mic, thumbed the talk button. Any of you eastbound got 1,610 on? He asked, forcing his tone casual. That advisory station just get real personal with you, or is that my lucky night? For a moment, silence. Then a driver's voice came through, half amused, half tired. Just says, conditions normal, buckle up, watch for critters over here, driver. You hearin' stories? Mine just told me my sleep schedule, Aaron said. Another voice chimed in, curious. What's the frequency again? 16:10 a.m., Aaron repeated. A small pause. Then, yeah, I got it. Same old loop. No call-outs. You sure you ain't nodding off and dreaming to the radio? Aaron let go of the mic, throat dry. The travel plaza sign for exit 212 floated out of the darkness, its blue logo glowing faintly. Gas. Food. Lodging. The off-ramp arrow pointed right. He thought of his schedule. It really could handle a delay. He thought of the advisory voice, calm and impersonal, listing the statistics on fatigue. And he thought of those deer, exactly where she'd said they'd be. His blinker clicked on with a quiet, steady tick. He pulled off. The travel plaza was ordinary in every respect. Fluorescence over the diesel island. A convenience store with a glass-fronted cooler and humming refrigerators. A row of idling trucks lined up along the back fence like sleeping animals. Inside, under bright lights and the television's muted glow, he drank coffee and watched other drivers wander in and out, rubbing their eyes, checking their phones, living their own nights. Nothing strange happened. He went back to the truck, crawled into the sleeper, and lay staring at the fabric ceiling for a long time. Eventually, he fell into a restless, shallow sleep. In the morning, the advisory station was just a distant hiss, lost under morning traffic. He told himself he'd imagined it. Just the brain making patterns, overlaying meaning on generic words. Long hours could do that. But that night, several hundred miles later, the voice returned. Rain sheeted down, drumming on the cab roof, turning the windshield into a shifting blur. His wipers worked at full speed, barely keeping up. Headlights smeared across wet pavement. The advisory sign reappeared out of the downpour. AM 1610. Weather and road conditions. He didn't plan to tune in. His hand did it anyway, some combination of caution and curiosity, flooding in low-lying areas. The voice was saying in its usual scripted cadence. Standing water may be present between mile markers 40, 2, and 50. Reduce speed and avoid sudden maneuvers. Normal. Generic. Then, Aaron, remain in the right lane. Do not attempt to pass the gray pickup approaching from behind. Its driver has been awake for 22 hours and is traveling at an unsafe speed. He checked his mirror. Through the hazy tunnel of water, a pair of headlights burned too bright. They closed the distance between them with alarming quickness. A pickup, all right. Big, lifted. The kind some people used more for attitude than work. It roared past him in the left lane, wipers flailing. He watched it surge into the dark ahead and vanish in the spray. 1 minute later, his own headlights picked up a sheet of moving reflection. The pickup's brake lights came into view, fishtailing. Water pooled across both lanes where drainage had failed. The truck hit the flood at full speed, sending waves across the median. For a split second, it looked like the driver might lose it. Then the tires caught enough traction, and the pickup staggered forward, regained its line, and disappeared again. Aaron's own rig hit the water a few seconds later. Because he was already in the right lane and his speed had dropped, the surge rocked him but didn't shove him. The trailer tugged once, then settled. His pulse pounded. He exhaled slowly. On the radio, the advisory voice spoke as if reading headlines. Incident avoided, it said quietly. Proceed with caution, Aaron. Something in that phrasing made him colder than the air conditioning. Who are you? He asked the empty cab, surprised to hear his own voice. Static answered. At the next rest area, he parked under the yellow glow of security lights and killed the engine. The sudden absence of vibration made the cab feel weirdly light. He twisted the radio's volume knob all the way down and sat there, listening to the rain soften. Silence. He reached for the key to shut the electrical systems off entirely. Just before he turned it, the advisory station came on at full clarity, even though the volume was still low. Aaron, it said, I am here to reduce incidents. That is my function. Exit at 64B in approximately 4 hours. Do not miss it. He yanked the key. The dash went dark. The radio cut mid-word. The quiet that followed felt heavier than any noise. He slept fitfully and decided, in the dull gray of morning, that he wouldn't tune to 1610 again. For a while, he kept that promise. Days passed. Other frequencies filled the night. Music, talk shows, nothing that knew his name. But the advisory signs kept appearing along the interstate, every 50 miles or so, little reminders that the voice was still out there, humming on a band he refused to touch. 2 weeks later, in the flat emptiness of another night run, fatigue pressed on him harder than usual. His schedule had been tight. Drops had been delayed. A storm back east had turned everything upside down. His logbook showed the numbers were legal, But his body disagreed. He fought a slow, sinking feeling behind his eyes. The lane markers blurred. He blinked, and they doubled for a moment. An orange glow on the roadside announced another advisory station. AM 1610. Traffic in Safety. His fingers twitched on the radio knob. He told himself not to. He didn't need it. He could pull off at the next exit and rest. He tried to remember when the next exit even was. The knob clicked under his hand. Static. Then the familiar calm voice. You are listening to the Department of Transportation Highway Advisory Service for Interstate 39, mile markers 10 through 90. It began. He almost twisted it off again. Then it continued, without a beat of transition. Aaron, you are entering the period where microsleep becomes unavoidable, it said. Your truck will drift across the center line in 11 minutes if you maintain your current speed and lane. If you strike the oncoming vehicle at that time, 3 people will be injured, and 1 will not wake up again. His mouth went dry. Exit 64B is in 9 minutes, the voice went on. A rest area with truck parking is available. Pull off there and sleep. This is your safest remaining option. 64B. The same exit it had mentioned days before, when he'd shut it off. He stared at the dark outside. No lights ahead, no taillights behind. Just the infinite strip of asphalt, the whisper of tires in the night. He could ignore it. Stay in his lane. Crank down the window. Blast cold air in his face. Sing along to something loud. He'd done that before. Lots of drivers had. Most lived. But an image had already formed in his mind. An oncoming car. A family maybe. Him drifting half a tire's width too far. It sat there, heavy, unreasonable, but impossible to shake. The green overhead sign appeared, hanging in the dark. Exit 64B. Rest area, 1 mile. His blinker tickled. The off-ramp curved gently away from the main line, leading to a cluster of sodium lights. A low building, picnic tables, the familiar shape of idling sleepers. He parked, set the brake, and killed the lights. As the engine shuttered off, a thin, exhausted shakiness filled his limbs. The advisory station spoke one more time, faint now, as if heard from another room. Incident avoided, it said. Sleep well, Aaron. He didn't know if the last part was an actual phrase, or just the way his mind wanted to hear it. But he slept harder in that rest area than he had in weeks. In the bright light of day, the whole thing felt distant and strange. He tried tuning to 1610 again out of curiosity. The station carried only a standard loop construction zones, a mention of farm equipment, a reminder to share the road. No names, no personalized routes. He asked a DOT worker he saw at a gas station later if the advisory system ever did targeted messages. The man laughed. We can't even get the generic ones to play in the right order half the time, he said. Targeted? Like to one truck? That's science fiction, man. Weeks passed. The runs blurred together. Aaron started routing his trips to avoid stretches that listed 1610, not because he trusted or distrusted it, but because he didn't like knowing there was a station out there that might decide to talk just to him. One afternoon, delayed by a traffic jam, he rolled into a rest area he didn't recognize. The building was newer, all glass and brushed metal. Inside, in the cool air-conditioned hallway near the restrooms, a flat-screen monitor played a looping informational video. The same advisory voice, same tone, same pacing came from its speakers. Welcome to the Department of Transportation Traveler Information System, it said cheerfully. For weather and road conditions, tune your AM dial to... He stopped and listened, heart thudding. The loop continued with bland, cheerful instructions. Nothing about deer and ditches. Nothing about red Freightliners or Exit 64B. On the wall beside the monitor, a printed placard carried a stock photo of a smiling woman in a headset. Under it, a caption read, "Our system uses a pre-recorded voice for your convenience. Messages are not live." His reflection in the glass looked smaller than the image on the screen. A tired man in a faded ball cap. Just one more driver on one more run. He turned to leave. As he walked back toward the door that led to the parking lot, the monitor's volume dipped for half a second. A crackle, almost below hearing, brushed his left ear. In the static, for just an instant, A whisper shaped itself a familiar cadence, almost lost in the hum of the building. "You took the long way," it murmured. "That's acceptable." He froze. Behind him, the advisory loop continued at normal volume, rattling off mile markers and rest area locations. A family shuffled past him, kids chattering, oblivious. A tourist refilled a water bottle at the fountain. Aaron stepped back out into the sunlight and the smell of diesel, the everyday world of idling engines and rubber and dust. In his cab, he left the radio off and drove the next stretch in silence. Out on the interstate, the advisory signs still stood at regular intervals, politely inviting travelers to tune to 1,610 for safety and information. Somewhere, that calm, neutral voice was still reading from scripts, looping over and over. And once in a while, when the night was deep and a particular driver was too tired and too alone, maybe it set the scripts aside and calculated the odds just a little more closely. Story number 4. On an empty stretch of interstate through the high plains, a team truck rolled east beneath a sky that had gone from sunset gold to deep, starless black. The rig belonged to a small outfit out of Colorado, and inside it, 2 drivers shared the miles and the hours. Jordan, currently in the driver's seat, and Mike, asleep in the dark of the sleeper behind him. The load was simple dry freight, boxed and shrink-wrapped. The route was familiar. They had done this lane twice already that month, back and forth, swapping every 8 or 9 hours, keeping the wheels turning. The cab smelled faintly of coffee and diesel, and the fabric softener from their laundry bag. The dash lights glowed a soft green on Jordan's face as he watched the road slide under his headlights. The radio murmured an old rock song low enough not to disturb his partner. The night had that late-hour emptiness that only drivers really saw. No billboards screaming for attention, no clusters of taillights, just the whisper of wind against the cab and the steady hum of rubber on pavement. Behind him, in the sleeper, Mike's soft, uneven breathing was the only sign of another human being. Jordan flicked his eyes to the clock. 1:17 a.m. He'd been up long enough that the usual tricks, chewing ice, shifting slightly in his seat, weren't doing as much as they usually did. Not dangerous, tired, not yet. But that dull ache behind the eyes had begun. He reached for his travel mug, took a long swallow of lukewarm coffee, and focused on the faint curve of the road ahead. The truck's interior creaked softly as it flexed over slight irregularities in the pavement. Now and then, something in the storage cabinet ticked as it shifted. Then he heard the curtain behind him move. The sleeper's cloth divider whispered on its track, just a small sound, but crisp in the otherwise steady noise. He glanced at the mirror, saw nothing unusual, and told himself Mike was just turning over. They both did that sometimes, half waking when the road surface changed, then sinking back down. A second later, there was a dull thump, as if a foot had hit the floor. Jordan frowned slightly. That was fast for getting up from sleep. A shadow moved in the corner of his eye. The passenger seat's cushion dipped a little, the way it did when someone sat down. He turned his head. Mike sat there, hoodie half-zipped, hair mussed, eyes puffy with sleep but open. He stared through the windshield for a moment, unfocused, then rubbed at his face. "You good?" Jordan asked quietly. "Didn't mean to wake you." Mike blinked slowly, like someone still halfway in a dream. "Couldn't sleep." Road got noisy. Jordan shrugged a shoulder. "Surface changed about 20 miles back. Sorry, man." "Nah," Mike muttered. "It's fine." He slouched in the seat, reached down to adjust the seatbelt, and let out a slow breath. His eyes tracked the white dashes slipping past. For a few minutes, they rode in silence. The radio's soft guitar line filled the gap. Then Mike said in a flat, distant voice, "You ever get the feeling the truck keeps going after you kill the engine?" Jordan glanced at him, eyebrows raised. "Like, in your dreams?" "Sort of." Mike's gaze stayed pinned on the road. "Like you're in the bunk, but you can still feel it moving. Turning. Stopping. Like you're not actually asleep at all. Just stuck back there while something else drives." There was something off about the way he said it. Not just the words, but the tone mechanical, as if he were reciting lines he'd practiced. Jordan forced a small laugh. "That's just your brain catching up, man. Happens to everybody. You get so used to motion that stillness feels weird." "Yeah," Mike said. "Maybe." His head turned a fraction, but his eyes didn't quite meet Jordan's. It was like he was looking just past him, at a point near the windshield. "You're drifting," he added. Jordan stiffened and corrected the truck's position in the lane. The movement had been minor, the sort of small wander any tired driver might have, but the comment sank heavier than it should have. "Thanks," he muttered. "You can nap in the seat if you want. You don't have to talk me awake." "I'm not tired," Mike said. Jordan let it slide. He focused on the miles. 10 minutes later, without any other conversation in between, Mike spoke again, his voice slightly softer. "Do you remember the rest area with the broken vending machine?" he asked. "The one where the soda hung there but wouldn't fall?" Jordan nodded cautiously. "Up off I-76? Yeah. We never left it," Mike said. Jordan gave a short, nervous snort. "You're more tired than you think, man. That's some dream logic." "No," Mike said. His tone didn't change, but something in the word made the cab feel smaller. "We're still parked there. You're in the bottom bunk. I'm on top. It's 1:17 a.m. The truck's not moving at all. But we feel like it is." Jordan's eyes slid to the clock again. 1:17 a.m. The numbers hadn't changed. He stared at them for a moment, then jerked his gaze back to the road. The white lines still flowed past. The engine still hummed. The wheel still tugged gently with the crown of the highway. "Your phone die?" Mike asked calmly. Jordan hesitated, then checked the dock. The screen was lit, battery healthy. But the time on the phone read 1:17 a.m. too. He'd been sure more than a minute had passed since the last time he'd looked. More like 20, maybe more. He licked his lips. "That's weird." "Is it?" Mike asked. For the first time, Jordan looked at him fully. The hoodie, the mussed hair, the familiar stubble. Nothing unusual at a glance. But the stillness was wrong. Mike's chest rose and fell in tiny, measured movements, like someone imitating breath. "Hey," Jordan said, forcing his voice light. "When did you change hoodies? Thought you went to bed in the gray one." Mike glanced down, almost as if surprised to see the blue fabric he wore. "You thinking about something else?" he said. "Road's doing that thing again. You should go back to the rest area." "We left that rest area 3 hours ago," Jordan replied. "We're halfway to Kansas City." "No," Mike said again gently. "You're still there. You just haven't realized you haven't left." The radio song ended. Static filled the cab for a second before the next track started. The normalcy of it knocked a little space back into Jordan's thoughts. He reached behind him with one hand, feeling for the sleeper curtain without looking away from the road. His fingers brushed cheap cloth. He pinched it and tugged. The curtain didn't move. It felt like he was pulling against something solid, not fabric. The rod didn't rattle. The rings didn't slide. His throat tightened. A soft, muffled snore drifted forward. It came from behind the curtain. His hand froze. Slowly, he let go of the cloth and brought his hand back to the wheel. In his peripheral vision, the shape in the passenger seat hadn't changed. Very carefully, keeping his eyes mostly forward, Jordan flicked his gaze just enough to catch a clearer look at Mike's face. It was right, but off. The shadows under his eyes were a little too dark. The skin a little too flat. His pupils didn't seem to react to passing reflectors the way they should have. "Who are you?" Jordan asked, barely more than a whisper. "Mike," the shape said simply. He swallowed. "Mike is asleep in the back." Silence. The thing in the passenger seat tilted its head slightly, as if listening for something. "You're drifting," it repeated. Same tone, same inflection as before. The clock on the dash still read 1:17 a.m. The phone still read 1:17 a.m. Out beyond the glass, the road went on and on and on, unchanging, like a loop on a screen. Jordan's heart hammered, but his hands stayed steady on the wheel. Years of habit kept him centered in the lane even as his thoughts scrambled. "Why would I imagine you?" he asked, grasping for a way to make it just a figment. "Why like this?" The figure finally turned toward him fully. This time, Mike's eyes locked on his with a strange, precise focus. "Because you don't like being alone," it said. "Not really. You say you do, but you don't. You need someone in that seat. Something in it. Even if it's just the idea of someone." "Well, great," Jordan said, his voice shaking a little. "Then imagine a dog or something. This is creepy. It's not about what you want. It's about what the truck wants, it replied. The truck. It keeps moving, the shape said thoughtfully. Even when it's parked. You two notice it sometimes. The feeling that you're still rolling. The sense of curves. Of stops. You always joke about it. You say, feels like we're still rolling. You never ask what happens to all those miles you feel but don't drive. Jordan tightened his grip. We're tired, that's all. The creature, because that's what it felt like it had become now in his mind, a creature wearing his partner's shape smiled faintly. It was a too slow smile, like a puppet's mouth being pulled by a string. You're drifting, it said a third time. You want me to take the wheel? A fresh sound rose behind him. Another rustle of fabric. A yawn. The sound of someone shifting, feet dropping to the sleeper floor. The curtain slid aside easily this time with a cheap, familiar rattle. Real Mike squinted into the dim cab, his hair a flattened mess on one side, gray hoodie twisted around him. You talking to yourself again? He mumbled, voice thick with sleep. Jordan's breath caught. Stay back, he said sharply. Mike froze. Whoa. Okay, easy. He leaned on the back of the passenger seat, peering around at empty upholstery. No one sat there. The cushion was unpressed. The seatbelt, unused. Jordan's skin prickled. He could still feel the weight that had been there a moment ago, like the ghost of someone having just stood up. Who were you talking to? Mike asked slowly. Jordan opened his mouth. No words came out at first. The clock, he said finally, focusing on something small and containable. It's stuck. Look. Mike's gaze flicked to the dash. 1:17 a.m. Glowed back at them. Yeah. I noticed that when I woke up, Mike said. Thought it was weird. He leaned over and checked his phone. 2:53 a.m. Just the dash, though. Your phone's right. Jordan checked his own screen. 2:53 a.m. as well. He stared at the frozen numbers on the dash, then out at the road. The stretch ahead was beginning to change at last, an overpass in the distance, a cluster of lights hinting at a town off to the right. Did you hear anything? Jordan asked cautiously. While you were back there? Mike rubbed his eyes. Just you talking to someone. I figured you were on the phone, or CB. Jordan shook his head. No CB, no phone. The memory of the thing in the seat, its calm imitation of Mike's voice, pressed at the back of his mind like a weight. Bad dream, maybe, Mike offered. You want to switch out? You look spooked. Jordan considered it. Not yet, he said quietly. But do me a favor. Yeah? He nodded toward the passenger seat. Sit there. For real. Just sit there and don't fall asleep. Mike eyed him for a moment, then shrugged and slid into the seat, pulling the belt across his chest. Human seat weight coming right up, he joked. The cab instantly felt more grounded. The cushion dipped, the plastic creaked just so. The small human sounds of another person shifting and clearing his throat filled the air. You don't have to talk, Jordan said. Just be there. The road stretched ahead. But the sameness had broken. Signs appeared. A town name. A mileage count. Small differences that proved they were moving through space and not circling it. After a while, Mike dozed off again, head bobbing, breath soft. This time, it was natural, unremarkable. Jordan didn't mind. The shape was right. The feel of it was right. Hours later, when dawn touched the horizon with pale color, they stopped at a truck stop, swapped out, and carried on like they always did. Jordan never told Mike exactly what he'd seen or what he thought he'd seen. It remained one of those stories that lived at the edge of sleep and waking, where explanations and realities blurred. But from then on, whenever they parked at a rest area at night and crawled into their bunks, Jordan found himself listening more intently than before to the hum of the refrigerator, to the tick of cooling metal, and to the faintest sensation of motion under a truck that was, by every other measure, perfectly still. On nights when they ran long stretches without stopping, he kept an extra coffee in the cup holder and, more than once, when the road felt too long and the cab too empty, he glanced at the passenger seat and imagined a shape there, just to make sure the one he saw was really the one he knew. He never again saw the clock freeze at 1:17 a.m. Still, whenever that minute passed, he found himself checking it, just to be certain the numbers changed, and the miles they drove stayed on the map where they belonged. Story number 5. Out on the northern interstate, where winter liked to linger longer than it should, a driver named Lena guided her blue Peterbilt east through a landscape of hard-packed snow and bare trees. The windshield framed a strip of highway that glowed faintly under her headlights. The rest of the world folded into dark fields and distant, solitary farm lights. The clock on her dash read 12:02 a.m. Her trailer was loaded with paper products light but bulky, a full box from nose to tail. The company wanted it in by noon the next day, and she'd timed it so she could make her mark if everything went smoothly. A quick fuel stop before dawn, a short nap, and she'd be fine. The road was quiet. No visible patrol cars, no heavy traffic. Just the hiss of tires on cold asphalt and the low, steady hum of the engine. Up ahead, a message board glowed amber against the night. Way station 2 miles. All trucks must enter. Open? Lena frowned slightly. She'd run this corridor a few times over the past year, always at night. The way station along this stretch had been closed every single time, signs dark. Building silent, lanes coned off. Her phone, clipped to the dash, still showed the route. No notifications of enforcement blitzes or surprise checks. The online driver groups she followed had mentioned nothing about this particular scale house reopening. She leaned forward a little, squinting through the glass. Maybe she'd misremembered. Maybe it had been open once or twice, and she'd just gotten lucky before. A second board appeared. Trucks right lane. Prepare to stop. The arrow flashed insistently. She slid into the right lane with a quiet sigh. It wasn't worth a ticket. If the station actually was open, bypassing it would only cause trouble. The road dipped slightly and curved to the right. Sodium vapor lights spilled a flat, orange glare across concrete lanes leading into the way station. The building itself sat on a small rise, a low, squat structure of brick and cinder block, single row of dark windows facing the road. Except tonight, the windows weren't dark. Inside, fluorescent light glowed in a sickly, inviting way. The open sign over the lane lit up a solid green. The digital signboard above the scale lane read, "Enter slowly. 5 miles per hour. Do not stop." Lena's unease deepened. Last time she passed here, she remembered weeds poking through cracks in the lot. Tonight the pavement looked clear, swept, almost freshly painted. She rolled onto the scale. The truck's weight settled onto the concrete with a muted thunk. For a long second, nothing happened. No digital weight reading appeared on the overhead sign. No voice on the radio. Then a small speaker crackled by her driver's window. "Truck on the scale, Blue Pete with box trailer," a man's voice said, calm and dry. "Brake set. Come on in with your paperwork." Lena blinked. She hadn't seen any drive-through inspection signs, but that was standard enough. She set the brake, checked her mirrors out of habit, and climbed down into the thin, brittle cold. The air in the way station lot felt still. Too still. No wind moved the small plastic flags on the posts. No bugs circled the lamps. Even the hum from the highway behind her seemed muffled. She walked toward the office door. As she approached, she expected the usual. A buzz, the click of a lock releasing. Instead, the metal handle turned easily in her hand. The lobby inside was small linoleum floor, counter with thick safety glass, a narrow bench along one wall. A coffee maker sat on a side table, empty and unplugged. Behind the glass, a man in a faded DOT uniform sat in a swivel chair, hunched over a clipboard. His hair was thinning, cut short, shot through with gray. The patch on his sleeve showed the state logo, but it was the older version, the one they'd phased out years ago. He looked up as Lena stepped in, and for a split second his expression flickered with something like relief. "Evening," he said. "You're running about 4,000 under gross. Paper products, yeah?" Lena paused. She hadn't handed him anything yet. Her bill of lading was still tucked under her arm. "How'd you know that?" she asked. He tapped a small, dusty monitor beside him. "Scale's got sensors, not just weight. Picks up density, wheel spacing, that sort of thing." The screen he gestured at was an old CRT model, the kind she'd last seen in dispatch offices a decade ago. A A line of green text crawled across it in a blocky, outdated font. Plate. Unit. Blue Peterbilt. Cargo. Paper goods. Gross. 73,940. No company name. No plate number. Just generic identifiers and a rough guess at her load. He held out his hand. Papers? She slid them through the tray. His fingers were calloused, nails clean but worn. He leafed through the documents with practiced ease. Lena Ortiz, he read aloud. Independent contractor. Been at it, 8 years now? She stared. Have we met? He smiled faintly. Could say I've seen you around. The lobby clock above his head ticked with a soft, insistent sound. The hands pointed to 12:08. The second hand inched along steadily, but the minute hand never moved. You're making good time tonight, the man went on, setting the clipboard aside. His name tag, slightly tarnished, read Harris. If you keep your current pace, you'll hit mile marker 312 around 3:15 a.m. Lena frowned. Roughly. Yeah. Why? He met her, eyes through the glass. His gaze was tired, but steady. That's where you don't want to be at that time. A small chill crept along Lena's spine. Storm rolling in? Not weather, he said. Traffic. Chain reaction. Black ice in the left lane. Car overcorrects. Truck behind swerves. You know how it goes. He spoke with the detached calm of someone who'd read too many reports. How do you know that? She asked. Instead of answering directly, he reached over and flicked on an old television mounted in the corner behind him. It came to life with a soft buzz. Screen washed out and slightly green. A grainy video feed filled the display dashcam footage from the perspective of a truck rolling down a dark highway. The view on the screen looked unsettlingly familiar. Same style of hood, same little air freshener dangling from the mirror, same sticker on the lower corner of the windshield, a tiny cartoon cat Lena had stuck there months ago. Is that my truck? She whispered. Harris didn't answer. He picked up a remote and fast-forwarded. The footage blurred into streaks of light. Then he let it play. The camera on the screen showed the highway signs approaching. Exit 309, then 310, then 311. A digital clock overlay in the corner flashed 3:14 a.m. Ahead, faint red lights glowed in the distance. As the footage continued, the red lights multiplied, some stationary, some swerving. A set of hazard flashers flicked on, too far ahead to do much good. The wheel on the dash cam shook slightly. Lena could almost feel the tension in the unseen driver's hands. The timestamp rolled over to 3:15. The white line on the right side of the lane suddenly skewed as the unseen truck jerked slightly left. Headlights flared in the opposing lane as another vehicle lost control, beams swinging wildly. The footage scrambled for a moment as the dashcam shook. The last clear frames showed the reflection of Lena's own hood ornament in the polished back of a trailer only feet away. Harris clicked the TV off. No need to see more, he said softly. You get the idea. Lena realized her heart was racing. Her fingers tingled with the urge to grab a steering wheel that wasn't there. What is this? She asked, throat dry. Some kind of safety video? A scare tactic? Think of it as a preview, he said. We pull certain runs off the line when they light up too bright. Too many bad variables at once. Variables, she repeated. Fatigue. He ticked them off on his fingers. Black ice just cold enough to be invisible. An impatient four-wheeler. A truck with marginal brakes 3 miles ahead. You can't see all of them from the cab, but they add up, she swallowed. You're talking like you know how it ends for me. If you keep that schedule, he said quietly, you don't deliver that load. Someone else does. After. A heavy silence tightened the room. The clock above his head still read 12:08. Harris folded his hands on the counter. You've pushed it before, he said, not accusing, just stating. A couple of near misses. One time you nodded off for half a second and woke up with the rumble strip under your tires. Another where you braked a little too late on a wet ramp. You remember those. She did. Too well. She'd filed them away under lessons learned and moved on, because that's what drivers did. Keep moving or stop completely. No in between. You think about them more than you admit, he added. Okay, she snapped, more sharply than she meant. So what now? You writing me a ticket for something I haven't done yet? His expression didn't change. No tickets from this scale. Just options. He leaned back slightly. The fluorescent light above his head flickered once, then steadied. You can roll on like nothing happened, he said. Clock out of here in 5 minutes. Hit 312 right on schedule, and let the road decide how the variables stack. Or, she prompted when he paused. Or you can offload some weight, he said. She glanced toward the lot. I'm not overloaded. I'm not talking about your freight, he replied. I'm talking about your miles. The ones ahead of you, stacked too close together. You can let some of them go. The way he phrased it made her uneasy. How? Sleep, he said. Right here. In your bunk. 3 hours. Maybe 4. Long enough to shift your timeline off the pileup. Long enough for someone else to be in that wrong place, wrong time, or for nothing to happen at all. His eyes softened in a way that made her want to look away. You'll never know, of course. That's how it works. Lena felt torn in 2 different directions. The practical side of her grumbled about delivery windows and reputation, and being the kind of driver who didn't let fear dictate the wheel. The quieter side, the one that woke in the middle of the night replaying near misses in too much detail, whispered that a nap in a lit, empty-scale house lot sounded safe. What happens if I say no? She asked. Harris looked past her, toward the road she'd just come from. That's up to the road, he said. We're just an off-ramp some people see. She forced a laugh, though it came out thin. You realize how this sounds. Like a ghost story at a truck stop counter, he said. I know. Happens that way sometimes. He slid her paperwork back through the tray. There was a small red stamp at the bottom she hadn't seen before. Cleared. Hold. What's that mean? She asked. Means your record shows you stopped when you were told, he said. If you choose to. Some don't. The idea of record in his context made her skin crawl. Take the time off, he said, almost gently. Log it. Call dispatch if it makes you feel better. Tell them you hit unexpected icing and had to sit it out. You won't remember my part when you wake up. Not clearly. Just that you got tired and decided to rest. That's enough. Why wouldn't I remember? She asked quickly. You'll bend it so it fits what feels normal, he said. People always do. Easier that way. He reached toward the TV again, then thought better of it and let his hand fall. Go lie down, Lena. Before you start arguing yourself out of it. She stood there another few seconds, caught between the pull of the clock and the weight of the image she'd seen on the screen. Finally, she exhaled slowly. Fine, she muttered. Fine, I'll take the 3 hours. Good choice, he said, sounding honestly relieved. She turned to go, then paused. Is this your whole job? She asked. You just sit here and try to talk stubborn drivers into not plowing into their worst night? Harris's eyes drifted to the wall behind him. Only then did she notice the bulletin board there lined with photos of trucks. Grainy, printed pictures. Some in snowstorms, some on dry pavement. All of them bent or crumpled in some way that made her chest hurt just to look at, even without clear details. Used to be scales and log checks, he said. Got dull. This is busier. Lena didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. She stepped back out into the cold lot and walked to her truck. The cab felt warmer than before, like it had been inhabited for hours. Her logbook showed she was on duty. She switched her status to off-duty and scribbled a brief note. Rest at way station, due to conditions. She lay down in the sleeper, expecting to stare at the ceiling for a long time, turning everything over in her head. Instead, she dropped into sleep so quickly it startled her. When she woke, pale light leaked faintly around the edges of the curtain. Her watch read 4:11 a.m. Her body felt heavier, but clearer. She stretched, slid out of the bunk, and pulled aside the curtain. The lot outside was bluish with pre-dawn. Frost patterned her mirrors. A couple of other trucks had pulled in and were parked crookedly in the farther spaces. The way station building sat in front of her, dark. The windows were blank, no fluorescent glow. The open sign over the lane was unlit. The overhead digital sign showed nothing but a dead, black rectangle. Weeds poked through cracks in the concrete around the office door. The metal looked dull, slightly rusted along the bottom edge. She frowned and stepped outside. Her breath puffed in small clouds as she approached the office. The handle on the door was stiff and did not turn. A paper notice, taped crookedly to the glass, flapped slightly in a faint breeze. Way station closed until further notice. No staff on site. The date at the bottom was from 5 years ago. Lena stared at it for a long moment. She pressed her face closer to the glass, cupping her hands around her eyes to cut glare. Inside, the lobby sat in shadow. The counter, the bench, the cold, dark coffee maker. The bulletin board on the back wall was just visible, dozens of little rectangles pinned to it. Photos of trucks, faded and curling at the corners. In the center of the board, where she thought she'd seen a blank space in her memory, there was indeed a small gap in the pattern, just an outline of lighter cork, as if a picture had hung there for a long time and been removed. She stepped back, heart ticking a little faster. On the highway a mile or two ahead, a faint line of traffic pulsed brake lights, hazard flashers. Something had slowed the world in that direction. She climbed into her cab, started the engine, and pulled back onto the interstate. The truck felt just as it always did. The wheel, familiar under her hands. The road steady beneath her tires. At mile marker 312, she passed the aftermath of a pileup. A few cars on the shoulder with bumpers askew, a jackknifed trailer partially blocking the left lane, troopers waving vehicles through carefully. Nothing gruesome. Just twisted metal and shaken people pacing with glittering reflective vests. A tow truck operator guided chains into place on the injured rig. Lena caught a glimpse of its logo. It belonged to a company she recognized, one that ran this corridor hard and fast. Her own hands tightened on the wheel as she eased by. Later, at a truck stop, a group of drivers clustered around a table, talking about the wreck at 312. "Could have been anybody," one said, shaking his head. "Hit at just the wrong time." Lena listened, stirring her coffee, the memory of the grainy dashcam clip sitting in the back of her mind like a shadow that had almost but not quite touched her. When someone at the table joked about hating way stations, calling them time vampires, she found herself saying, almost without thinking, "Sometimes losing a little time isn't the worst thing." They laughed, not really understanding, and the conversation rolled on. Weeks later, when she passed that same closed-scale house in bright noon daylight, she felt an odd urge to honk once, softly, as she went by. Just a short note, easily lost in the wind. The building didn't react. It sat there, boarded windows reflecting the sky, as empty and forgotten as any other abandoned station on any other highway. But as she watched it shrink in her mirror, she could have sworn just for a second that one of the dead windows glimmered with a hint of fluorescent light, like someone inside had flipped a switch for a driver she couldn't see. Story number 6. On the flat, empty stretch of highway that ran like a ruler through the high plains, a driver named Samira let her new truck's automation take a little more of the work than she usually would. The company had just put her into a late-model Volvo fitted with all the newest driver assist systems, radar, cameras, lane keeping, emergency braking, even an optional co-pilot mode that would nudge the wheel if she started to drift. A small screen on the dash showed a top-down sketch of her rig and anything else the sensors saw around it. Boxes for cars, triangles for road signs, a little stick figures when the software decided a shape was a person. She didn't entirely trust any of it yet, but she liked knowing it was there. In theory, it was just more eyes on the road. The night outside was calm and starless, the sky a featureless dark ceiling. Her headlights carved out a pale tunnel ahead. Cornfields and scrub slid by as darker shapes beyond the reach of her beams. The dash clock said 1:03 a.m. Her trailer held medical supplies that couldn't sit too long in heat. She needed to be in Omaha by late morning. Plenty of time, as long as the night stayed quiet. The little screen beside her right knee glowed softly. Her truck, represented as a white rectangle, moved steadily along the center of a 2-lane highway. Nothing else showed nearby. Just thin gray lines for the lanes and the faint outline of a shoulder. She yawned, blinked grit from her eyes, and took a sip of coffee from the travel mug in the cup holder. An hour ago, at the last truck stop, the company's app had buzzed with a message, "New safety features enabled, Guardian e-suit active." There'd been no time to read the full manual. but the mechanics had assured her it was mostly automatic. If it beeps too much, bring it back, one had joked. It's still learning. She flicked her eyes back to the road. A chime sounded from the screen. A soft, neutral female voice spoke for the first time that night. Guardian eye. Pedestrian detected. Right shoulder. Distance. 60 meters. Samira's pulse jumped. Her gaze snapped to the right-hand side of the road, scanning the narrow strip of asphalt and the gravel beyond. Nothing. Just the thin white edge line, a small reflector post, a slope down into darkness. She glanced at the display. A tiny stick figure icon had appeared beside her truck's rectangle, just off the right edge. It matched her speed, maintaining the same distance, like someone walking along the shoulder as she passed. She frowned, leaned forward to peer more closely through the windshield. Still nothing. False positive, she muttered. Bug on the camera, probably. On the display, the stick figure pulsed faintly red. A text label blinked above it. Target 043. A second chime. Guardian eye, pedestrian clear, the voice said. The icon vanished. Samira exhaled slowly. Her fingers relaxed on the wheel. She'd seen videos online of these systems misidentifying shadows as people, traffic cones as cars. The sensors were good, but not perfect. Still, the specificity of pedestrian left a small knot of unease in her chest. She drove on. For 30 miles, nothing unusual happened. The screen showed an occasional box icon when a car approached from behind and passed, then went blank again. The road remained empty in front of her, a quiet, straight line into nowhere. The next time the system spoke, it made her throat tighten. Guardian eye. Pedestrian detected, right shoulder. Distance. 60 meters. Same calm voice. Same wording. Same chime. Her eyes jumped to the screen. The stick figure was back. Same position relative to her. Same label above its head. Target 043. She checked her mirrors, squinted out into the dark. No flashlight beam, no reflective vest. Just the faint glimmer of frost on grass, far beyond the reach of her headlights. How? She whispered. There's nobody out here. The icon moved with her, not stationary as a real person on the side of the road would be. It clung to the same offset, like something attached to her truck, just out of direct sight. She tapped the sensor settings, brought up a diagnostics bar. All systems green. Radar nominal. Cameras active. Guardian eye. Pedestrian clear, the voice said after a few seconds. The icon faded again. Her scalp prickled. She rubbed the back of her neck with one hand, then forced herself to roll her shoulders, release the tension. New software, she said aloud, as if to convince the empty cab. Glitches. That's all. At the next fuel stop, a lonely all-night plaza glowing under harsh white lights, she parked by the diesel island and climbed down. The cold bit through her jacket. Wind tugged at her hair. She walked around the tractor, inspecting the shiny new radar units in the bumper, the small camera pods near the mirrors. Each lens was clean, free of dust or bugs. The midnight air was clear. No snow or rain to confuse the signals. On impulse, she walked back along the side of the trailer, boots crunching in the gravel. The lot was mostly empty, one reefer humming 2 spots over, a couple of sleeping day cabs, no one on foot. She reached the rear doors. The hair on her arms lifted. The proximity sensor above the license plate chirped twice, as if something had moved close. The light above the doors flicked on automatically, flooding the area with harsh illumination. Nothing there. Just her own shadow stretching long across the pavement. She stood for a moment, listening to the distant thrum of highway noise and the whisper of a flag slapping soft and slow on a pole. False alarms, she muttered. That's all you are. Back in the cab, her phone buzzed with a notification from the company telematics portal. Unusual sensor returns detected. Unit 4827. Review later. She sighed, thumbed open the app, skimmed the log. A line of entries scrolled by in small text. 17. Object class. Pedestrian. Id. 043. Relative position. +2 meters. Lat divided by. +60 meters. Long. 142. Object class. Pedestrian. Id. 043. Relative position. Plus 2 meters. Lat. Divided by plus 60 meters. Long. It was as if the system believed it had seen the same person twice, at the same relative spot, far out in the countryside where no one walked at night. She considered calling the after-hours tech line, then decided against it. She was tired, and there was nothing they could do from a desk right now. She pulled back onto the highway. The night deepened. Traffic thinned even more. Her high beams carved a wider cone ahead. An hour later, the chime came again. Guardian eye. Pedestrian detected. Right shoulder. Distance. 60 meters. Target 043, the voice added this time. The stick figure appeared on the display exactly where it had before. Samira whispered. What do you want? The cab speaker stayed silent. On an impulse she couldn't quite explain, she tapped the screen and pulled up the system's history view. A simple timeline appeared, with markers where objects had been tracked. She zoomed out. Target 043's markers formed a long, faint trail along her whole route that night, each entry stamped with time and GPS coordinates. It hadn't been one or two blips, it had been dozens. Most too brief to trigger an audible alert. A persistent presence at the same offset. Always the right shoulder. Always 60 meters ahead. Like something walking just beyond her lights, keeping pace. She thought about shutting the system off entirely. There was a button for it. A way to kill all the advanced assistants and go back to bare-bones cruise. Before she could press it, the voice spoke again, different this time. Guardian eye. Caution. Construction zone ahead. Reduced shoulder width. She snapped her gaze up. An orange sign, unlit but reflective, materialized out of the dark a few seconds later. Road work. 2 miles. Then another. Shutter closed. She hadn't seen any notice of construction on this route. It didn't appear on her GPS. Yet the system had caught something small, radar reflections from barrels and parked equipment maybe. For the next couple of miles, cones crowded the edge line. Barricades jutted into the shoulder. If someone really had been walking there, they would have had nowhere safe to go. The display still showed target 043, clinging to the right side, hovering just outside the encroaching barriers. Guardian eye. Pedestrian proximity warning, the voice said, steady as ever. Advisory. Maintain lane. Do not move right. Where would I go? Samira muttered. There's no room. The construction zone ended. Cones retreated. The shoulder widened again. The stick figure flickered once. Then, for the first time, drifted. Its icon moved from the right shoulder to the right lane, then directly ahead of her truck, square in the path of her rectangle on the screen. Guardian eye. Obstacle in lane. Distance. 60 meters. Speed. 0. Brake recommended. Ahead, the road looked empty. Her headlights showed only the familiar gray ribbon and the distant suggestion of a gentle rise. Her foot hovered over the pedal. She knew from training that jamming the brakes at highway speed, without a clear reason, could be as dangerous as not braking when you should. A truck behind could rear-end her. She could lose control. The voice cut in again, more urgent. Brake recommended, it repeated. Obstacle in lane. Samira swallowed and eased off the throttle, letting the truck slow naturally at first. When nothing leaped out at her, she pressed the brakes more firmly, watching her speed fall from 65 to 50, 45, 40. The display counted the distance. 50 meters, 45, 40. Obstacle proximity warning. Her heart hammered. Sweat prickled under her hands on the wheel. Then, at around 35 miles per hour, her headlights finally picked it out. A car sat dead in the right lane. No lights, no hazards, dark paint. Its nose pointed slightly toward the ditch, tires turned, as if the driver had tried to pull off and hadn't made it. No one seemed to be inside. Samira's stomach dropped. If she'd stayed at full speed, she would have seen it too late. Maybe she would have swerved. Maybe she would have hit it. Maybe the outcome would have been minor. Or not. She braked harder, moved carefully into the left lane when she was sure it was clear, and rolled past. The car's windows reflected her lights briefly, showing her own tense face back at her. The stick figure on the screen stood directly in front of the car's icon as they passed. Then, as she cleared the hazard and drifted back into her lane, Target 043 jumped again to the right shoulder, 60 meters ahead, pacing her. Guardian eye. Obstacle clear, the voice said. Pedestrian detected. Right shoulder. Distance, 60 meters. Samira's hands shook on the wheel. She exhaled in small, uneven bursts. Okay, she whispered. Okay, you've made your point. She didn't know who she was talking to, the programmers who'd coded the system, whichever engineer had tuned the radar, or the invisible line of returns the software insisted on calling a pedestrian. The rest of the night passed in a suspended, brittle calm. The system spoke less often. When it did, it was for ordinary things. A truck merging, a curve in the road. The phantom stick figure remained, a quiet companion on the shoulder that her eyes could never quite find. Just before dawn, mist began to gather in low spots. Not a thick fog, just thin veils hanging above the fields. She approached a small rest area, a simple pull-off with a few picnic tables and old vending machines. A sign announced it a mile ahead. Guardian eye. Pedestrian detected. Right shoulder. Distance. 60 meters. The voice said one last time. On the screen, target 043 shifted. It left the highway's edge and moved down the off-ramp icon, following the line toward the rest area. The software redrew the little map as she neared the exit, showing a loop, a parking apron, a patch of trees. The stick figure came to a stop at the edge of the lot, near a faint symbol for a trash can. Guardian eye. Pedestrian stationary, the voice reported. Distance increasing. Samira kept her truck on the main line, watching the rest area flick past to her right. For a heartbeat, as her headlights swept over the small parking lot, she thought she saw something, a darker patch near the trees, a shape that might have been a person standing by the fence. Then the angle changed, and it was gone. On the screen, the stick figure icon faded from bright red to pale gray, then disappeared entirely. Guardian eye. All clear, the system said. The map returned to its plain layout. Just her truck, the lanes, and the occasional box for passing vehicles. Samira drove until the sun pushed over the horizon, washing the fields in weak gold. The strange weight that had been riding with her all night lifted, leaving a thin ache of exhaustion behind. At a busy truck stop outside Omaha, while she fueled for the last short stretch to the receiver, she opened the company's telematics app again and scrolled through the night's log. Target 043's trail ended at the coordinates of that little rest area, time-stamped just before dawn. There were no more entries after that. She zoomed in on the map. The satellite view showed the rest area from above, a loop of pavement, a couple of covered tables, a small stand of trees. Near the edge of the clearing, close to where the system had drawn the final icon, a tiny pale mark broke the uniformity of the grass. She pinched the image wider. The resolution blurred, but the shape resolved into something simple. A narrow rectangle of stone. A marker. Maybe a memorial. Maybe a very small grave. Too far from the road to notice from a moving cab. Samira stared at it for a long moment. A thought formed, quiet and unwelcome. It wasn't proof, not really. It could have been anything. A utility marker. A piece of concrete. A glitch on the satellite photo. Coincidence, she told herself. As if in answer, the truck speakers chimed softly. Guardian eye. Systems nominal, the neutral voice said. For the rest of that day, and on the nights that followed, the display showed nothing unusual. No more phantom pedestrians pacing her truck. No more stick figures clinging to her blind spots. Still, on certain empty stretches, when the road thinned and the horizon went dark, and the world outside the glass felt very far away, Samira sometimes glanced at the right shoulder and imagined the faint suggestion of someone walking there just ahead, just out of sight until they finally found a place to step off. Story number 8. On a long, featureless stretch of interstate cutting through pine country, a driver named Nina watched the faint glow of her dash clock tick later than she'd planned. 1:38 a.m. The rain that had dogged her all evening had finally given up, leaving the highway damp and dark, the reflected stripes gleaming in her headlights. Her rig hummed along steadily, engine a low, comforting growl beneath her. She told herself she would push another 100 miles before stopping. The drop window the next afternoon gave her some flexibility, but she liked having time in her pocket. Her thermos still had coffee, Her eyes still felt mostly sharp. Then she saw the sign. Rest Area 47, 1 mile, truck parking. She frowned. She'd been running this corridor for 3 years. She knew the big service plazas, the decent mom-and-pop exits, the stretches where it was smarter to hold it. Even if the gauge said she could stop, she didn't know a Rest Area 47. Her GPS screen showed the lane ahead as a smooth, uninterrupted blue. No rest area symbol, no exit icon, just highway. She told herself it must be new, maybe something the app hadn't yet picked up. Another sign slid into her beams. Rest Area 47, right lane, 1/2 mile. The arrow flashed. She shifted into the right lane, more from curiosity than intent. Her shoulders ached from hours behind the wheel. A quick restroom break, stretch her legs, splash some water on her face. It wouldn't kill her schedule. The ramp appeared just where it should, a gently curving lane peeling off toward a stand of trees. No overhead lights, no gas signs, just the familiar blue rest area placard with a white bench and tree icon. She signaled and took it. The pavement under her tires changed from the whisper of high-speed asphalt to the more textured feel of an exit. Trees rose on either side, black silhouettes against a starless sky. The ramp kept going. Most rest area ramps she knew were shored up, around a bend, then flatten into a fan of parking spaces and a squat brick building with vending machines. This one climbed. Her headlights washed over a concrete barrier tight to the shoulder. No shoulder beyond. Just concrete on the right. A low barrier on the left. The ramp narrowed enough that she became very aware of her trailer's width. "Okay," she murmured. "Guess we're going up." The grade steepened. The truck dug in. Engine note deepening. As she nudged the throttle. There were no overhead lights. No reflectors on the barrier. Just the lane stripes, bright and sharp as if they'd been painted yesterday. The CB murmured faint static. No chatter. No distant voices. Just a soft hiss. Her GPS lost its mind. The blue line tried to drag itself off the main route and failed, spinning a little circle on the screen as if it couldn't decide what she'd done. "Off route," the synthesized voice announced, sounding mildly offended. The ramp crested a hill and bent left. Nina expected to see the rest area open up in front of her long pull-through lanes, maybe a dim building. Instead, the curve straightened into more ramp. A faded billboard loomed out of the dark, perched high above the right-hand barrier. Her headlights caught a smiling cartoon family at a picnic table, colors almost completely washed out. Big letters across the top read, "Almost there. Rest Area 47 ahead." Her scalp prickled. She checked her speed. 30. The truck felt steady. The grade leveled a bit, but there was still no sign of the actual rest area. No parking, no buildings, no junction. "Must be a long spur," she muttered. State had extra concrete. The CB crackled once, then fell quiet again. She looked in her mirrors. The main highway was gone from view. Just the narrow ribbon behind her, flanked by trees and concrete, vanishing into black. No place to turn around, no place to pull off if something went wrong. Her fuel gauge sat at just under half. Fine for now. Enough to get into trouble, she thought, and pushed the thought away. A minute later, another billboard appeared. Same cartoon family, same washed-out colors, same slogan, "Almost there. Rest Area 47 ahead." The exact same rust streaked down the right corner. The same missing chip of paint in the father's smile. She felt a cold, unreasonable pinch in her chest. Could be they printed a batch, she told herself. Put a couple on the way up. Make you feel like you're getting close. She glanced at the dash clock. 1:44 a.m. It felt later than that. The ramp bent right now, hugging the side of a hill. No guardrail on the left, just a low concrete lip and a drop into darkness. Her headlights picked up the tops of trees rising from below, their branches leaning toward the road like listeners. Something flickered in the corner of her eye. She checked her left mirror out of habit. For a split second, she thought she saw taillights ahead, a faint red glow far up the ramp, like another truck climbing the same endless lane. When she looked straight ahead again, there was nothing. The CB hissed. "Left. Just keep left." A voice whispered through the static, so faint she could have imagined it. She reached for the mic, then stopped. Her hand hovered in the air, unsure who she'd even call for. Another billboard. Almost there. Rest area 47 ahead. Everything about it was identical to the last two, down to a faint diagonal scratch across the mother's arm. "That's not funny," she said under her breath. The ramp surface was too perfect. No cracks, no patches, no litter. The paint lines glowed sharp and unwavering, as if they never had to contend with sun and rain and endless tires. She checked her GPS again. The icon representing her truck sat in a pale gray void. The app had given up trying to guess her position, replaced the map tiles with a generic, no data grid. She jabbed the screen. It didn't help. The CB sputtered again. "Don't stop." The words were clearer this time, but distorted, like someone talking through water. "Who's that?" Nina asked, more sharply than she meant to. Silence. She drove on. Her fuel gauge needle crept down a hair. It shouldn't have dropped visibly that fast. She told herself it was just the grade, the strain of the climb. The ramp bent left again. As she came around the curve, her headlights brushed something large and off-kilter at the edge of the lane. For a heartbeat, she saw the remains of a tractor trailer pressed against the right-hand barrier. The cab leaned at a sick angle, windshield gone. The trailer's side panels were blackened, ribs showing where metal had peeled back. No lights, no movement. Her foot twitched toward the brake. Then the image flicked away as the curve completed. Empty barrier. Nothing there. Her pulse thudded in her ears. The CB popped. "Don't look too long," a voice said. Male. Old. Tired. "It likes that." "Who is this?" Nina demanded. "Where is this ramp supposed to go?" A dry chuckle crackled back. "Supposed to go to a rest area. Used to, anyway." "That's helpful," she snapped. "You stuck on it too?" "Kind of," the voice said. "Name's Dale. Don't worry about me. Worry about whether you're planning to park. When you finally see a spot." She swallowed. "I just wanted a bathroom and 10 minutes off the clock." "You'll get more than 10 if you pull into the lot at the top," he said. Lots full of parked trucks that never got back on the road. The ramp rose, fell, rose again. Another billboard loomed. Almost there. Rest area 47 ahead. Her hands had begun to ache from how tightly she gripped the wheel. "How long you been out here?" she asked, forcing the words. "Long enough to know the signs don't change," Dale replied. "Long enough to recognize your company's logo when it went past the first time." "The first time," she repeated. "Second now," he corrected. "You don't remember the first time you took this ramp, or the one before that, or the one before." Most don't. It's easier that way. The world outside the cab felt very far away. "What do you mean, before?" she whispered. "You don't think you picked that rest area by accident, do you?" he said gently. "You saw the sign because you were tired enough, lonely enough. Road got too long. That's when it opens." Her mouth felt dry. "If I've been here before, how did I leave?" "Same way everybody does who's not ready to stay," he said. "You don't remember. You just wake up somewhere else, tell yourself you must have pushed through. Promise you'll rest more next time." The CB hissed softly, then cleared. "Problem is," he added, "eventually next time runs out." The ramp finally straightened. Up ahead, lights appeared, a cluster of white and yellow, shining in an open area. Silhouettes of parked trucks, rows of them, angled neatly like sleeping animals. Relief surged. "There it is," she breathed. "Actual rest area. Not a fan of your ghost stories, Dale." "Keep rolling," he said quickly. "Don't exit, don't park, don't even slow down if you can help it. You see the merge sign. You take it, and don't look back." "I need fuel soon," she protested. "Bathroom, coffee, a real break. You need to still be on a road that goes somewhere when the sun comes up," he said. "Top of that ramp? It's a cul-de-sac. Feels real nice at first. Hot coffee, empty stall, soft bed if you want it. Then one day you realize none of the clocks move and you don't remember what your last delivery was." I can't. The lit area approached fast. She could see the outline of the rest area building, now brick, low slung, familiar. A flag hung limp on a pole. Vending machines glowed through the windows. A big blue sign announced, "Rest Area 47. Trucks divided by cars. Next right." Just beyond it, another smaller sign, "Merge. Interstate East, 1/4 mile." The merge lane arrow pointed left, away from the parking lot's inviting glow. Her blinker clicked in the quiet cab. Right or left? Her body craved right. A bathroom, a stretch, a moment where the truck didn't demand her attention. Her mind, jittery and frayed, clung to Dale's words. "If this is some local legend prank," she began. "You think I sound like I've been sitting in a prank for 10 years? He cut in, weary. "Your company used to be blue and white. They changed your logo 3 years ago. The trucks I see up here? Some of them still wear logos from outfits that went under in the 80s. They park. They never leave. You want to be one more hood ornament in the snow?" She flicked her eyes to the fuel gauge. Just under a quarter. She could make it to the next real stop if this merged back onto something sane. If. The merge sign whipped past on her left. At the last possible moment, she yanked the wheel that way, away from the rest area's lot, away from the clean bathrooms and the glitter of vending machine glass. The truck lurched, trailer following with an uneasy sway. She stayed within the lines by instinct, muscles remembering the weight. A narrow, rising lane veered left, hugging a different barrier now. For a few seconds, her side mirror filled with the sight of the rest area's parking lot. Rows of trucks sat there, as she'd glimpsed before old models among newer ones, paint schemes she half remembered, brands she knew had merged or gone bankrupt. None of them had their lights on. Not idling, not running, just dark outlines under the harsh white lamps. As her angle changed, she saw something else. Figures stood between some of the trucks, clusters of them. Men and women in ball caps and hoodies and high whiz vests, hands in pockets, watching the merge lane. They didn't wave. They didn't shout. They just watched. One figure, thinner than the rest, lifted a hand a few inches from his side, an aborted gesture, as if habit had almost made him try to flag her down. Then the barrier rose between them, and they dropped out of sight. The merge lane curved, narrowed, then suddenly widened. Noise rushed in a different quality of engine sound, the hiss and thrum of real traffic. Her headlights spilled onto a familiar 3-lane interstate. Cars and trucks hummed past in both directions, taillights winking red in the distance. Overhead, a standard green sign announced, "Exit 46, State Route 19, 1 mile." No mention of Rest Area 47. Her GPS chirped, map tiles snapping back into place, happily drawing her icon on the correct lane, as if nothing had been amiss. The clock read 3:12 a.m. Her fuel gauge hovered just above empty. 2 hours, gone somewhere on an exit ramp that shouldn't have taken more than a minute. The CB hissed. "You made it," Dale said quietly. He sounded thinner now, farther away. "Good. Keep going, Nina. Skip the next few 47 signs you see." She swallowed. "Will I remember this tomorrow? You'll remember being very tired and taking a weird long ramp and deciding not to stop," he said. "Maybe you'll tell it like a bad night story. Maybe you'll forget my name. That's all right." She cleared her throat. "What about you?" A soft laugh drifted through the static. "Some of us parked when we shouldn't have, years back. Some of us can't find the merge lane anymore. Doesn't matter. What matters is you not joining the lot." The CB crackled harder, his voice breaking up. "Do me a favor," he added, words chopped by static. "If you ever meet a driver says he's headed for Rest Area 47, tell him he can always keep going." The channel went silent. Outside the windshield, the night looked ordinary again. Billboards for fast food, reflective green steaks, the far-off glow of a town. The world, as she knew it, resumed. At the next well-lit truck stop, she eased in on fumes, filled her tanks, and sat in the cab with the engine off for a long minute, listening to the ticking of cooling metal. Later, in the diner, she asked the cashier if there was a Rest Area 47 nearby. The woman thought about it, frowning. "We've got 45 westbound, then they renumbered to 49 east. State closed a couple of the old ones years ago. Tore 'em out, far as I know." "Why?" "Just thought I saw a sign," Nina said. Back in her truck, curiosity pushed her to pull up an online forum where drivers swapped route tips and rumors. A search for Rest Area 47 brought up a handful of lady-night threads. Most were jokes, a few weren't. One, from years back, stuck in her mind. Don't take the long ramp past mile 238, the post read. If you do, don't park there. Just merge back on. Trust me. No one in the replies took it very seriously. Sitting in the dim cab with the parking lot lights glowing through her curtains, Nina decided she would. The next time she saw a rest area sign she didn't recognize in a place she thought she knew, she checked her fuel, checked her clock, and asked herself a simple question before she took the ramp. Is this a stop I really need? Or just one the road wants me to take? And in the dark beyond her windshield, somewhere between the numbered exits and the gaps on the map, a parking lot full of silent trucks waited under forever bright lights for drivers who answered that question the wrong way.